Because you put too much of this in, and Richard's gonna clip it at the start for fun.
Oh fuck. Oh no. Oh, no.
And then he'll have this stupid little text that says, yes I will. This is a tier list of the decks after NA Nats. For the most part, into the meta. This is just kind of a rough little, layout of our feelings of the meta currently.
We left out the good decks like Erupting Alan.
Yeah, no, we Erupting Alan's terrible deck. So what we're gonna do, anyway, first deck, Water Toris allies, primarily. This deck is pretty damn good. It's definitely one of the better decks in terms of the allies strategy. And I think Toris just kind of outplays Lorraine in a lot of the ally fronts. But yeah, Toris definitely is a good leader in that sense, and Water gives you the access to play a bit more mid-rangey and tempo with the Frostbinds, Song of Frost, those sorts of things.
Yeah. Holding up hands with the Water Toris allies deck in particular is quite scary, because you just feel like you can't do much. You're either going to get negated or just stopped or blocked, and it's good to be able to have a deck that can hold up or put down. It's just very solid overall.
Yeah. Storm of Thorns is a very, very good card.
Yes.
Very scary. Alright, next up is Water Crux Merlin. Water Crux Merlin. I think this deck, tier 3. It's not anything special. You could probably bring it to locals and get a few wins. Could win an event if you pilot it well, but I definitely don't think it's going to be winning any tournaments, any ascents, any nationals anytime soon.
I think a big problem with it as well is that the people that play the Water Merlin lists, they're quite into it, and they've just purpose-built the decks for themselves. So picking it up is going to be really difficult, because you're going to be borrowing someone's list that's just got in a random one or two of that doesn't make sense to you because you don't play the deck. So it's a bit of a labor of love.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of decks in the game like that where it's just good to have your own personality to it, and you can build the deck to cater to yourself. But
yeah,
Water Merlin's probably one of the better ones in that regard. Next up is our all-time tier 1. No, definitely not. Arasana in general, I'd have to put in the Water Sylvie starter tier. But Water's probably one of the ways you would play it. I've seen different variants.
You sort of have to. The fire's just not fast enough. It's just right at home. Unless you're playing Water, which is just everything else at home.
You can play a worse version of Erupting with it. You do get access to some different cleric cards, because I feel like they did try and do a little tinsy bit of cleric burn in the fire cards, but there's just not enough of it to make it worth it. Alright, Water Diana allies.
Yeah, onto actual decks again.
Yeah, onto actual decks, and to be honest, first tier 1 deck. It is super solid, giving you the Water allies tempo and a really good finisher in the fact that you can use the Scepter of Lumia plus leveling up, as well as getting a gun. That sort of bursty turn where you go from 1 to 2 and then get the gun out and shoot someone, it can just be devastating.
Yeah, I particularly like playing with the Crystalline Archer, but that's just me. It's just the cascading around into milling, hopefully picking off a little floating to use with the Crystalline. But the best thing about it as well is you can just, like the Water Merlin in a way, you can tinker it how you like. You're going to do well. It's very easy to pick up, and then you can sort of meander around with it until you're comfy with a list that you really have fun playing, and it's going to just perform really well too.
If you've played any sort of allies deck, kind of moving into a water-based one is pretty good way to go, because it gives you a bit more, you're playing a bit more interactively, and you've got to think about your turns a little bit more than if you're just playing a brain-dead ally deck. But these decks in particular are pretty good, and there's different ways you can go about it. I think with the meta being so heavy as well on Graveyard, with Fire, particularly with Erupting, cards like Sea Sprite Diver have been amazing in the Water allies decks. Now, the greatest deck...
We should have just named we should name the video just 2 Rye players make a tier list.
Yeah, that's really what this is. This is 2 Rye players who want to put them up here, but are going to slowly slide them down to tier 3.
Not too far.
He's been done and dirty. Yeah, we are part of the Unbanned Reckless Conversion Committee. We're starting a wee cult, and there's gonna be a petition going around.
Pray to the devs every day.
Yeah, no. Fire Arcane Rye is just... There's too much high rolling that you need to get your Vanish from Sights, to get your Peaceful Reunions, to get your Resolute Stands. If you don't see them, and if you don't see them at the right time as well, but then you've also got to banish all your cards, it's just, in the current state that the meta's in, it's just not a deck that can reliably compete at a high level.
Yes. I think the best thing about Rye is that it's so rewarding when you play it right, and you can't just pick it up and play it to a high enough level to do well. You will always feel amazing when everything goes perfect for you in a Rye game. You won't feel amazing if you're playing against it, but it'll just play a better deck.
My biggest thing with the deck is there was so much that had to come out to make it just stay alive that it makes, you know, the games where you are in ahead less consistent, and that just means that you have a lot more bricks.
It's not consistent enough, as Josh said, yeah. If you think about it, you sort of have to put the same 12 cards in your deck of 4 peaceful, 4 resolutes, and 4 vanishes, and that's just sad from a deck building point of view, where you have to put in 12 cards that aren't even from your class that you don't really want to have in, and you're taking out cards you would rather put in just so you can survive. But that's just how the game is, so it's what it is, but it's a bit sad.
Alright, well, we'll move on from our little pity party over here. It's been too long complaining about Rye. Let's move on to a Water Lorraine allies. I think definitely a tier 2 deck. There's a lot of the ally decks I feel aren't kind of breaching into tier 1 at this point. There's a lot of other decks that have managed to take control in that sense, and just, you know, keep the allies decks in check. It's been an archetype that's been around for a long time, which means people have grown to deal with it. And the comeback of, you know, flame sweeps, hurricane sweeps has meant that they've definitely been punting them down a little bit. So allies players are having to think a little bit harder on their plays.
People remembering that cleaves exist in the game is quite impressive.
It's definitely, I still think Water Lorraine allies is definitely a good way to go. Obviously, it's still been performing very well. I just think there's many different flavors now that a lot of the ally players are being spread amongst different champions between, you know, Toris and even Diana. So they're all kind of all in the same chunk, but they're just different flavors of allies at this point, and different elements now as well, which I think is really good. I think the fact that you can play it not just in wind is fantastic.
But how about we talk about an actual deck, our good old Prismatic Mordred?
Yeah, so we put this in there to keep the editor happy. And yeah, Prismatic Mordred, it's a rogue list. It'll come out and it'll get you out of nowhere.
You can just get hit by a huge 18 damage hit with the Rending Flames on an Erendite with how the deck runs. It's so fun. It's very fun to play against as well. You really get tripped up when you see Mordred with a Prismatic Sanctuary. Very funny, very silly. Whoever cooks with this is Master Chef. Top.
Now back to real decks.
Shit, no, man. I believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man.
He's gonna hate me for that. We have Wind Allies Toris version. Definitely got a few pieces. Wimbled's Gatekeeper is definitely one of them. The one that can come down, add a buff counter. It's just it gives you the sort of versatility that you need, and can also push some of the 4 toughness allies, particularly Ace and Protector, up by 1, which is just huge. Up to 5 toughness, it's almost impossible to deal with. So at this point, because Crystal is banned, it's definitely got a few more tools than Lorraine.
Pushing anything above 4, which is sort of the sweet spot for removal. So that's your Focus Flames and your Angler Skies. So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make things tough. I would say there probably needs to be more of that sort of stuff. Interceptors that don't do as much damage, but a higher toughness.
It also does go well into other ally matchups, because if you're a level 1 Toris, they can't swing very easily into your allies you have on the board, which is a handy thing when you level up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like me, where you'll forget
yes.
that Toris is taunt,
yeah.
and because they're playing an allies deck, and it doesn't really matter, but it'll come up and you'll notice it, and it's, oh man, I can't.
You can get a cheeky Foster off, or you keep your board up and you can swing their board down, and then you've got card advantage on the field, and it's very good.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where if you think you're going to stay alive, just maybe do a double take, thinking, oh, I'll just clear one of the allies. Double check to make sure Toris hadn't just hit the field, because it will get you, and you might need to play your turn differently. All right, cool. We have a really sick deck here in Wind Sylvie. No, it's definitely a rogue deck. It is I would say probably, in my opinion, from a play it at home sort of for casual fun games, I would think it's a more interesting version of allies. It's a bit more fun. Definitely just not as competitive.
The big monkey is funny.
Big Monkey is definitely funny. Less people play that now when they play Sylvie Allies. Or Sylvie,
they're playing it wrong.
They're playing it wrong, yeah. It's definitely one of the coolest allies in the game. It's the monkey.
It's not gonna win consistently, but you will have fun playing it. the monsters are fun to play with.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely good fun. All right, now Wind Rye. I think as dedicated fire players or fire Rye players,
exclusivists, elitists,
patriots. It's pretty tough for us to put Wind here, but the biggest issue with Rye is that he takes too long to level up, and Wind kind of solves that issue. Not to mention that Arcane Elemental plus Disorientating Winds is a pretty sick combo.
I mean, I refuse to summon the Spirit of Wind, so I don't think I will never be picking this up. But it always has been a better Turbo Rye. So it's interesting that it's still performing well in a meta where Turbo Rye is not really on top. The Beseech plays obviously just handy, just extra dungeon guides to get to higher levels. And some people are cooking some very silly decks with it that aren't as competitive as the main ones you're saying. So you have silly value and you have competitive value. So overall, it's just a good solid thing if you want to still play Rye currently.
Alright, next up we have Wind Merlin Crux. Definitely a deck that fell off from Houston, and then not many people, if any, were really playing it in FTC. The loss of Avarice, I think, put a lot of people off. But I would say we did see, I think, 1 or 2 in the top 32 of NA Nationals, and I would say it's probably not a deck to bat an eye at. I would say it's definitely something to keep your mind open to, because Merlin is still really good. You can turbo faster, like we just said with Rye.
Yes.
You can turbo a lot faster with Wind Merlin, and Prismatic Edge with Wind to pick combo pieces out of an Erupting is pretty good, but also even just picking combo pieces out of any deck, realistically.
Protection pieces as well.
There's nothing that feels worse than losing cards, and using Prismatic Edge with Ascension lets you do that.
I think another interesting thing about some of these tier 2 decks, especially ones like Wind Merlin, is not everyone's going to be playing them, so you will have shock value and people won't be as practiced against you, so you have that going for you when you're playing games competitively as well, which is always something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I definitely think Wind Merlin is one of those ones that people won't be expecting as much. Right, Lorraine Wind Allies. We're kind of stacking them like this. I think Water probably has a little bit more of an edge overall, but I think Wind is a little bit more explosive. But in terms of consistency and performance, I would say Water is better, but Wind, hey, good old Lorraine Wind Allies, still a solid deck. You still get your Phalanx Captains, you can you can still play Banner Knights, you just have to go up a little bit higher. Num num the Banner Knights.
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah, I mean, you could still playing Lorraine, even if you want to play your Banner Knights, which are very delicious. You still want to go to level 2 in order to do that now, and it means that you can also kind of get accessibility to Hurricane Sweep and draw a lot of cards. So it's into the mirror with Lorraine. If you do want to play a bit of Hurricane Sweep, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, these tier 2 ally decks are quite interchangeable on terms of what's better and what's worse, and it's going to come down a bit. I'm not going to say to the player because brain dead ally decks, but I will say you can get luckier or unluckier, and it'll always be interesting.
Yeah, I think realistically you would probably all stack them in a line, these four at least, these Toris and Lorraine
it's
ones.
Like a personal preference, what you like playing. They're all going to do about the same.
Yeah, play what you're better at. Alright, now this disgusting deck that needed to leave. It's slowly getting pushed back. I definitely think it's one of the lower tier 1 decks at this point. It's probably on the border of tier 2.
Pushing tier 2.
I think part of it is just that it didn't get much from ALC. Also, people have been playing it against it a lot. The meta's gotten a lot quicker. So for a deck that wants to get to level 3, it does make it harder. It's kind of running into the same issue that Rye did, except the end game for Merlin can pick up a lot quicker than with Rye. And it's got a few more outs with the deer and whatnot. So it's still a good deck. If that's what you've been playing and you know the deck well, just keep playing it.
I think that it's still going to be consistent no matter what. Well, if nothing happens to the cards it has, it's always going to be a consistent deck that can be competitively viable, and you'll always be able to take games off of anyone, really. And it doesn't have terrible matchups. You can always just side in 4 Scavenging Raccoons and your Merlin level 2, and you can eat up every card in the graveyard so that Erupting can't play the game. You always have a way to deal with most decks in the game, as per the nature of the deck, so that's never a bad time to play the Fire Merlin right now.
Yeah, probably one of the most consistent decks in the game, I would say, overall. It probably just suffers a little bit from being a tiny bit slow. But speaking of counters for Merlin, probably one of, if not the best deck in the format right now is Erupting. Which makes me very happy, because it's it's an easy port from FireEye. There's a lot of the same sort of things going on. Just count to 9 and win the game. Yeah, I think the mix of adding in the hybrid strategies, which I'm seeing more and more now, there were kind of the FTC side of things where people were playing to level 3 Merlin, but now at this point a lot of people are playing Lorraine just to get some fiery momentums, which are very, very good, and also the Flame Sweep going into level 2 Lorraine it's a stroke of genius, because allies do pose a massive threat. And realistically, when you get to level 2, even if you've invested your floating memory and maybe 1 or 2 cards, you can still then fiery momentum and get an Erupting combo off basically with no stress whatsoever.
It is funny seeing deck lists that have upwards of 5 champions in the material deck. And Innovate Fury plays are always really cool, and it is one of the fastest decks, so just being able to level 2 kill someone, or turn 2 kill someone, sorry, is always going to be nuts. And you can just get uber lucky and be able to cycle through enough cards to Lorraine, fire momentum, and kill someone.
It is a hyper aggressive and probably one of the most high roll decks. You definitely need to see, early draw. That's probably the biggest thing. It's not so much about getting the combo pieces, because if you'll dig enough and you'll find them, you really want to see Cremation Rituals, Creative Shocks, Hasty Messengers. You need to see them early, and if you don't see enough of them, you're gonna struggle quite a bit. I also think that Discordia is definitely the perfect crystal replacement. Such a good play.
Yes, it's a very big stroke of genius. We ever saw that.
Yeah. We definitely saw a few of them going in ANATs, and it's just it is just another crystal of empowerment. It does make the deck quite a bit better.
Next deck is the Onsol Lorraine.
Onsol Lorraine. Nah.
Down one.
Yeah.
It's just been sort of power crept, I think.
Yeah, it's got a similar stroke to Wind Crux Merlin, where it's one of those rogue decks that you won't see very often, and can catch you off guard. I think also there's a lot of new players now, and Onsol is definitely an older card. Kind of fell out of fashion quite a bit after Dawn of Ashes, so seeing it now is pretty scary, especially for new players. And a lot of people will forget that even if they can Onsol, if you'll think, oh, they'll Onsol and I've got 1 card in hand, but if that card's a dispersion, you're kind of screwed.
Yes.
So yeah, it's definitely a deck to keep your eyes out for. It still does kind of run into the turbo to level 3 problem, is that's what you need, and then you also still got to get to 7 cards in hand at the very minimum.
It's good. It's fun. It's not the best. I think it's also, it suffers from the fact that you can just outspeed it, as you said. It's a bit slow, and the allies tend to do well into it, but that one turn feels good.
Yeah, and I mean, Resolute Stand is still a card that it ends up in a lot of decks. So, it does.
That's why I have to play Dispersion, though. The Dispersion is the good counter to that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good counter to it. But I mean, it's still suffice to say that if they don't have it and they need to just attack, Resolute still exists, which is any one card that can exist and can be played without a cost, especially.
Yeah.
Resolute can be played with a single card in hand.
Yeah.
It just means that your entire game plan can be ruined.
Exactly. Aggro Xander.
All right. Fire Aggro Xander. Now this deck is pretty good. I would probably put it on this side though. I think it's probably the most high roll deck. Probably it's somewhat on par. I think maybe a little bit more high rollies than Erupting, because Erupting has a bit more of a long game now. If you do miss out, this deck, if you need to hit that turn 3 and not see a safeguard on the other side of the field. But if you don't do that, if you win the dice roll and you're in front of materializations, it can be devastating, and it's a miserable deck to play into. When they have the cards, you go, they play their spirit, you play yours, they play a grail, and you just know it's coming, and then the next turn, unless you can do something, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah, I think in my experience playing as hybrid Erupting against Aggro Xanders. I do think it's a bit of a coin toss sort of matchup where whoever wins coin toss sort of wins the matchup, which is not very healthy for the game, but it goes hard. It's not fun to play against. It's silly.
No. I would also argue personally that I think, well, Erupting is also not super fun to play into, but I think this Aggro Xander deck has such a consistent turn 2, turn 3 win. Well, it has to be turn 3, but turn 3.
Yeah.
A very consistent turn 3 win. And
I sort of feel like if you survive turn 3, you can always survive the rest of the game.
Yeah, you definitely have to manage their resources. As your protective trinket to stop rending flames is pretty good, so it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. It's still floating around. These decks they've been getting kind of close to topping tournaments. They haven't been winning, but they've been getting very close. So there's a sort of deck that if someone's on a roll and they're high rolling all day, they could run through a tournament pretty easy with this. Alright, so next up we have Serene Luxem Xander, which, to be honest, I would say is almost on par with Erupting in terms of being at the top of the meta. Only reason it's slightly below is because Erupting counters it. But it's definitely, because of the Serene side of it, it's definitely one of the most consistent decks out there.
I love it. I love the list. It's so creative. It's so cool. It's just really, really fun to see. It hard counters most of every ally deck, which is why it just deserves to be so high. And most lists you're going to run into is some form of allies. I think it performs better into. I think it beats. Would you agree? It beats Merlin pretty consistently.
Yeah. I mean, Merlin, until they get to their Fireball turn, they're going to be trying to plug away at you with, Ghost Serpent Dragon and hits from the deer. If they get the deer out, it's going to be pretty tough, although you do have Excalibur, so, there's a lot of outs and there's a lot of tools in your tool belt with Luxem Xander, so, and I think Deft Executor, it wasn't what made the deck, but it just made it that a little bit more consistent. Because Juggle Knives or using a Thieving Cut on level 2 and then going to level 3 is just really good. There's a lot of consistency and a lot of value that comes out of that.
It's also a rewarding deck, with the more you play it, the better you'll get, and then the better you get, the better you perform. You can't just plug and play it, you have to have a little think about it and do some practice.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the highest skill tier of deck. I would say it's probably one of the hardest decks to learn. Alright, Fire Diana. Good old Fire Diana. This is obviously going to Crux. Sorry, not Crux. Umbra. Going to Umbra. It's good. It can kill you on level 3 with very little cards in its hand. It basically plays the early Fire package, which we see on a lot of the decks. Like if you look at, Fire Merlin, you look at Erupting, Fire Diana, they all run the same sort of early game package to draw a shitload of cards, have a bunch of floating memory, and it means that realistically they're going to be able to get there. They'll see their dungeon guide, 1 or 2 of them, and then they will try and do as much as they can to you. And using the Duststalker to get curses on you is extremely rough for a lot of decks, since draw is a huge part of the game, and they will abuse the hell out of that.
And forcing the opponent to draw is also a very incredibly fun mechanic. Making a Bulb of Abundance not a useless card is probably the funniest thing that Fire Diana's given us. There's nothing more satisfying than watching someone that's not been Fire Diana'd before just pulling out a Bulb of Abundance against them and them laughing at you, and then you laughing at them when they've taken 8 unpreventable damage.
It is an insane combo. It's personally, I think Curse Breaker is the more fun the more fun version of Diana, but it's way less consistent and way more risky. It's super cool being able to attack a lot, but this deck the curses, man, they are lethal. Alright, so one deck we did see that is kind of snaking its way into tier 1 without having a lot of presence currently. It's Water Serene Luxem. We did see a lot of the Fire Serene Luxems running this in their sideboard, where they would run a Serene Water Spirit as well as some Fracturizers, because like I said before, Erupting is probably its worst matchup. So seeing this in the sideboard was really cool and really creative, and some of the Serene Luxems were just running it straight up because it allows you to, even in game 1, Fracturize and Lantern, which stops a lot of the decks, especially in tier 1, from doing what they do. And Erupting, again, being the worst counter to it, it just allows you to get around it.
I think it's really cool that we have decks coming out that have used 2 elements, because a lot of the Serene Luxem Xanders, Serene Fires Luxem Xanders don't actually run terribly much fire, it's usually just 8 fire cards. So then if you swap out 4 of them for 4 Fracturizers, then you only have 4 dead cards in your deck, which isn't too much. You can just bottom them with the Serene Spirit. Yeah, it just goes creative, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I really love to see it. Chess Club did a great job with coming up with Serene Luxem, and it's good now that it's out in the wild and people are putting their own spin on it, and it's good to see. Alright, so another deck that's kind of in a similar position, probably doesn't quite make it to tier 1, just because we haven't seen it played a lot, but definitely the top of tier 2 is definitely Xander. Water Xander allies. Poison Dagger is a gross card, and playing that when you've got 3 or 4 allies on the field, even plus a Freezing Hail potentially, is just pretty good.
It's just, yeah, it just turns a very big turn. It's a very big turn 3 when you just go nuts with the Poison Dagger. Just seeing a bunch of 2-3 allies and thinking you can survive, and it's like, oh crap, now I'm taking another 3 allies.
Yeah.
I think it's better than the other water allies decks, other than Diana. But yeah, it's early days with it, because not terribly many people are running it.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is it folds pretty hard to cleave, because it relies on you having the allies on the field, because the turn that you pop the Poison Dagger is not the turn that you are playing a bunch of cards, like in the Fire Aggro Xander, where you're, popping the dagger and you've maybe got 1 ally, but then you play out a planted and a, mark the target, those sorts of things. This deck really relies on you having the allies on the field, which is probably why it still sits in tier 2, but it'll be good to see what people do with it.
And then the best deck for last.
The best deck for last. I would disagree.
Erupting at home.
Erupting at home, yeah. Definitely a deck. Fire Lorraine. It's a deck that we saw a lot of in DOA and a bit of in FTC, especially with Horn by Fire. Became really good to do a massive Rending Flames. It kind of got controlled by Rai doing a bit of spell shielding, but definitely the amount of good interceptors that there are now makes this deck pretty hard to play.
Yeah, and the fact that it is just worse Erupting. Most people are using Hybrid Erupting right now, so if you're wanting to do big sword swings, just play Fire Momentum and Erupting, and then you're going to have a better outcome, because if someone is taunting and intercepting, then you can just tick into a mage and play the Erupting Fireball combos. So it's less consistent, it's still good, you'll still win games with it, and you do go fast enough to win games with it, but it's just not top anymore as it used to be in DOA.
Yeah, if you can control the allies on the other side of the field, it's pretty damn good. But in terms of the current meta, there is just so many library witches and shield mates running around that you're not going to have a good time. But anyway, that is our meta. Let us know what you think of it. There's definitely could be a lot more adding in the other champions, but for the most part, we're just kind of looking at the top of the meta, adding in a few funny ones.
Don't want to spend 10 hours talking about Fire Arasana.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, they're Fire Arasana.
My Water Rai allies list I was cooking.
Yeah. What we're going to do next time, 100% guaranteed, not a lie, is we're going to go through every single flavor of Sylvie and
do
and
a
cook up
Sylvie
Sylvie. No, I'm joking.
Beast allies tier list. Every single Sylvie card. Do a tier list for
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be our next review. But anyway.
Oh God.
Let's leave it there. Let us know what you think.